Yo, what's going on, gamers? Merry Christmas to you guys, and today I want to make the top 10 tips to get better at Survivor. Now, by the end of this video, you will become a better Survivor, so if you enjoy these types of videos, drop a sub and a like, and let me know who your favorite Survivor to play as is. Now, let's get this started. The first one is respect tear radius. I see so many people who just let the tear radius, fall onto them and then not actually, run. They just allow the killer to get close to them. You need to understand that the tear radius doesn't mean automatically run, but it doesn't mean just sit there and let the killer come to you. You have to understand when the killer is chasing somebody or where the killer is, especially with what perks you're using. If you're able to see the killer, especially with stuff like Kindred if a person's on hook, or if you're running Dark Sense, etc., stuff like that, you're going to be able to see the killer. If you don't know where the killer is, it's always best to just play in a safe spot if you hear the TR getting closer to you. If it's ramping up, you need to play in a safer spot, whether it's under a pallet or on a corner where you know you can see the killer. But if you see that they're getting looped by one of your teammates, you need to stick to whatever you're doing, whether that be healing or doing a gen or doing a hex totem. Don't do dual totems. But if you see that they're busy doing something, stay on what you're doing. And as long as you know you're in a safe spot to do that, keep doing it. The next is scout surroundings. You need to know where you can run if the killer does end up coming to you. Now, the best way to do this is literally just run in a full circle around the gen that you're doing, or just look around you while you're doing something to get a mental mindset and a mental map of where you can run while you're doing what you're doing. If you're on a gen and you actively know the killer is going to come to you, or you start hearing the TR come to you, you need to know exactly where you can run and what you can do with that. If you just see a small filler pallet that you know you're going to get hit by, don't play the filler pallet. If you're doing a gen in a pallet gym, use the pallet gym and then loop into the filler pit palette and then go back to the pallet gym. It's that easy. It's that simple. Know how you can connect your loop, which we will get on to later. The third is hug loops to get more out of them. You need to be hugging loops tight. You need to literally be on top of the wall, so you are still going full speed, but you're also not losing any distance. If you don't hug walls tight, you will have to make up that distance that you have in between your wall when you next turn, or just in general. If the killer is also hugging the loop, which they should be, they will catch up to you extremely quickly. Now, if you are both hugging the wall, you will both be at an equal pace, not obviously a movement speed since the killer is faster than you, but you will be at a more equal pace to be able to make more out of the loop. Next is you need to take hits for your teammates. If you see a teammate at second stage or before first gen pops, you see them getting chased near you, just take a hit. Buy the other teammates time to do things, or trade hooks, which we will get to in later. But if you see that your team is on death hook, taking a hit for them is extremely valuable. You now have to take a hit just so they don't die. Playing a 3v1 is much harder than playing one where you're just injured, or especially if you go down, that's perfectly fine. At least you're not dead. You can still play the game with 4 people. If your teammate is on death hook, or they're getting chased pre-first gen, now the reason pre-first gen is useful is because it is early game. Early game is one of the most important for killer. If they get that hook off, and let's say it's a pain res, or they have another regression perk, it's going to stall first gen by a lot longer of a time, instead of just taking it, buying time for the other 2 teammates to get the next 2 gens done, and you're good to go. You're now in the more or less mid game where you have a lot more wiggle room to do whatever you need to do. The next thing, and I know this is said a lot by a lot of people, but you need to try and play more killer. This will help you get more of a mindset on what to do against killers, knowing what 50-50s to make, know how to play loops better, etc. You will get a lot better at Survivor by playing killer. It doesn't have to be any killer in specific, doesn't have to be anybody too complicated. You don't have to play Nurse, Blight, etc. Just play a killer. Honestly, the best one you could probably play is just like a normal M1, because you'll learn exactly how just a normal loop will go, and then the more you get better, the more you can start adding different counterplays to different powers, which a video will be coming soon on how to counterplay each killer. The next one is loop loops. Genuinely loop loops. Don't instantly drop a pallet. If you instantly drop a pallet, you are not using or wasting enough time of the killer. the best thing you can do is loop a loop more times. Get a bit greedy. You might just have to get greedy, and if eventually you get hit, it's not that big a deal. Take it and run, which we'll cover in the next one too. But most of the time, you want to loop it just enough to where if you were to you're about to get hit and then you drop the pallet, you either get the stun or they respect it, and now you have even wasted even more time because you just looped the loop. That's how you gotta do. The hint's in the name, just loop the loop and then drop the pallet once you can't no more. Number 7 is take a hit or slap over dropping god pallets. Now, there are obviously conditions to this. If you are pre-second gen pop, take a hit on a god pallet and just run. Find a different loop to loop, which you should already know where to go, and loop it instead. If you are on Death Hook, you can drop this pallet. If you have 3 gens or less, you can drop the god pallet. That's usually the good rule of thumb to use, because by the time you're in mid game, which is around 3 to 2 gens, you're not going to be really needing this god pallet anymore, or more or less you have more time to play with when you're playing with this god pallet. God pallets are really, really strong mid to late game, because you're now buying time for these last few gens to be popped. If you see 2 teammates or 3 teammates on gens, you can go ahead and drop this pallet and safely say, okay, we're either going to pop all 3 gens here, or we're going to pop the next 2 gens, and the last gen's going to be pretty easy. The next one is trade hooks for people on death or going second. Now, we did kind of cover this with take hits for teammates, but if you see somebody going into struggle phase, or they're on struggle phase and they're about to die, you need to trade hooks. Don't be scared. You going on a hook on first hook or even second hook is much, much better than this other person going on death. That's worse, because a 4v1 is much better than a 3v1. Now, if you both are second hit stage, don't trade for you to die, for them to die. That's bad. If they are going to die, just let them die. This only applies if you are on Death Hook. If they are going to die, let them die, and as long as you have been doing a gen that whole time, then it is okay. But if you have not, then it's a waste of time, and you're probably going to lose anyway. But if you are Death Hook, they are Death Hook, you need to prioritize the objective, and not one of you dying anyway. Now, if you are one stage, or you have 0 hooks, always trade. Every single time, always trade for the person on Death Hook. Always do it. Be a better teammate. Play that 4v1 instead of that 3v1. 9, and I did say we would cover this later, is connect loops together. Another reason to scout your surroundings, going off of number 2. You need to be able to connect your loops. If you have a TNL, a pallet gem, and a filler pallet in between those, you now have 3 loops to play with, instead of just playing the TNL. You can vault the window into the filler pallet, loop the filler pallet. If you have to drop it, that's okay. And then you can either loop that back into the pallet gem, or you can loop it back into the TNL. Now, sometimes you don't even have to drop that filler pallet, and you can just play the TNL again, and then go back to the filler pallet, etc., etc. You get the gist. Make sure you are connecting your loops together. If you do this, you will waste a lot more time of the killer, and the point of looping is to waste the time of the killer so your teammates can get your gens done. Now, if your teammates are doing gens like mine, well, I'm sorry. Just loop them to get better. Number 10 is make yourself busy with important things, and don't ever not do anything. Either be doing a gen or healing a teammate, or I guess if there is a hex totem, you can do that. But if it's not an important hex totem, don't worry about it. But just make sure you're making yourself busy with important things. Like I said, gens or healing are usually the only ones you really want to be doing. Other things like cleansing dull totems and whatever else you can possibly find, they usually aren't worth it. Never cleanse a dull totem unless you are positive the killer has no ed, but even then it's not really worth it until endgame. And just make sure you're doing that. Be a better teammate for your teammates. Make sure the game's getting progressed. Don't ever just run around the map doing literally nothing, because that's how you lose games. You just need to be doing something, and take everything else that I said, and you will become a better survivor right after the end of this video. And that's about all I got. I really hope you guys have a great Christmas today, and hope you guys love the content. More will be coming in the next week. They should have a video posted every single day for the next week. If you want notifications on that, make sure to subscribe and like, and leave a comment below on your favorite survivor. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.